Hello, my beautiful sewing friends. I'm trying to get a head start on my holiday crafting and sewing, and I thought I'd invite you to come along with me by showing you a really fast and easy item that you can make that is both beautiful and functional. My name is Annette, and I'm sewing in Michigan. To make our quick and easy drawstring gift bag, we are going to need a remnant of fabric, whatever kind you want to use. I have a Christmas fat quarter here, but you could easily use something from your stash. The size of the piece of fabric you need will depend on the size of the gift bag you want to make. And you will need some kind of ribbon or cord because we're going to make a drawstring bag. You will need the thing you're going to wrap. I'm going to use this book as an example. And beyond that, you just need your standard sewing notions and your sewing machine. So the only things that you might have to purchase are some Christmas fabric, unless you want to use fabric from your stash, and some kind of thin ribbon or lace or cording that will be appropriate for tying up the drawstring bag. So let's get started. I have opened up my fat quarter and pressed it flat, and this is the item I want to wrap. So I have laid it on top, and I am going to cut across here and up the side so that I have two pieces of fabric that are slightly larger than the thing I want to wrap. Now that I have my two pieces of fabric cut slightly larger than my book here, I am going to put them right sides together, and I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and I am going to sew around three sides. So I'm going to sew down, across, and back up. And then I'll meet you back here at the ironing board for the next step. I've sewed up my bag with about a 1/2 inch seam allowance around here. Sewed it up three sides, left it open at the top. And now I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm going to snip these corners at an angle so that it will turn inside out nicely. And then I'll do some pressing. So I'll show you that in just a second. I clipped those corners and turned my bag inside out and poked out the corners so they were square, sort of. It's not going to be perfect. And here's where the seams are going up the sides. Here is the open top. Now, the first thing I want to do is press these side seams open about 3 inches down or so. That's going to make it a lot easier when I go to thread the cord through the drawstring. So let me show you what that looks like. I just opened up my gift bag and pressed those side seams open like this. Now I'm going to take this over to the machine and I'm going to sew around the edges there in a big rectangle to keep the edges of the seam open. That is going to be very useful when we go to thread the cord through. So I'll show you what that looks like. So now you can see how I've sewn a rectangle here. And if we flip it over, I've done the same thing on the other side. Sewn a rectangle to hold that seam open. That's going to be very useful. Now, the next thing I want to do is to press under just a tiny bit of the upper edge, and then I will press it further to make a casing. So let me start with that tiny upper edge. So my upper edge has been pressed down just about 1/4 inch, and then I want to press a bigger length down to make a casing at the top. Now, the length of the casing is just going to be dependent on how thick your cord is and how big your item is that's going in here. Okay, so I cut my fabric bigger than the book that's going to go inside of it so that I had room for my casing. And I have just some very thin ribbon here, so it's not going to have to be super wide, but judge accordingly, remembering that there are going to be 2 pieces of ribbon or cording going through this casing. So as long as it's wide enough for 2 pieces of your cord to fit comfortably through the casing, you're fine. Now I'm going to press this down at the same width all the way around, and I'm going to sew it. And normally when we're doing something with a drawstring, we leave a little gap. We're not going to do that this time. We're going to sew this top hem all the way around. Now I sewed that top hem around the bag, and then I sewed around the edge of the top of the bag. Now comes the fun part. We're going to put the drawstring in. And in order to do that, I took my seam ripper, voila, and I opened up the side right here and right here. And that's where we're going to string our cord through. Now we're going to use 2 pieces of ribbon, and one of them is going to go around this way, like in a C shape, with the 2 ends sticking out here, and the other end is going to go the opposite way, in a C shape going this way, with both ends sticking out here. That's going to enable us to pull on both sides and have it gather up. So we'll want to cut 2 lengths of ribbon. I'm going to make mine quite long so I have enough room to tie them up on both ends. But let me show you how I feed those through. So you can see what I was talking about. I'm going to feed the first length of ribbon in this end, around the whole casing, and back out this end. So I have 2 loose pieces of ribbon sticking out on the same end. And then I'll repeat it in reverse. So let's start by putting this one in. So here we go. I just used my little bodkin to pull that through, or you can use a safety pin, whatever your normal instrument you use for threading things through. Since the casing is wide and the ribbon is narrow, it went through with no problem. And you might be able to see here that ribbon is going across that opening. And sewing those seams open is what made this easier to thread. I don't know if you've ever been putting elastic or cord in a casing and it's gotten hung up on the side seams. This keeps it from happening. So now I'm going to take my other length of ribbon and I'm going to thread it in from the other side, so the ends are sticking out the other open seam. Now with my book in the bag, I was able to pull the cords on both ends to gather it up. I tied a pretty bow on each end of the cords, and now my gift is in a beautiful bag that could be reusable, could be an easy scrap buster, could be a fun way to use some Christmas or holiday fat quarters. If you feel inspired to buy some holiday fabric, but it's not something you would use a lot of, this came out of a fat quarter with about this much left over. And the fat quarter was like $1.50. The ribbon I already had. So this only cost a couple dollars to make. It took about 10 minutes to sew up. And when you consider if you buy gift bags, even paper ones, how much they cost, or if you order something from Amazon and you order the gift bag, those can be, $7.99 extra. I hope you'll give making your own Christmas gift bags a try this year. And send me a picture if you do. I'd love to see them. Happy crafting. Bye.